This is the Chinese anarchist he-yin. In 1907, she critiqued feminists who sought to achieve women's emancipation through winning the right to vote and electing women into parliament. This general approach to feminism continues to be advocated in the modern world. We are told that the interests of women everywhere will be advanced if the American empire is led by a woman, or if more women are in corporate boardrooms working hard to ensure that shareholders make as much money as possible. This idea was refuted at the dawn of the 20th century before Margaret Thatcher had even been born. he-yin argued that this kind of girl-boss feminism ignores that the majority of women are simultaneously oppressed by patriarchy, capitalism, and the state. These systems of oppression are not separate discrete entities. They instead interconnect and mutually constitute one another such that they produce life outcomes that are greater than the sum of their parts, and cannot be reduced to any one specific social structure. For example, patriarchy includes bosses sexually harassing and abusing poor women at work. Capitalism involves poor women being economically subordinated to and financially dependent on the men who treat them as sex objects. This situation is, in turn, enforced by the state, which protects private property rights and therefore reproduces the gendered and economic inequalities between male bosses and female workers. Given this kind of sociological analysis, girl-boss feminists will not achieve the emancipation of women as a whole, since their ascent to power leaves the bulk of oppressive structures intact. They will instead establish a situation in which a minority of upper-class women wield power, alongside men, to oppress the majority of the population, both male and female, in their class interests. This is a point that he-yin made at length. She wrote that, "If gender equality simply means that a minority of women may take political office and maintain an equilibrium of power with a minority of men who hold similar office, we should try to explain how the following happens among men, namely in today's world, where there is a difference between men who rule over other men and men who are ruled by them. The majority of the ruled in the world of men are demanding a revolution. As for the idea of equal division of power between men and women, most people seem to believe that since there are power holders among men, there should be among women as well. But did such powerful female sovereigns as Queen Victoria of the British Empire, or Empress Luzi and Empress Wu Zitang in the dynastic history of China, ever bring the slightest benefits to the majority of women? A minority of women holding power is hardly sufficient to save the majority of women. In the case of Norway, for instance, the few aristocratic women who occupy political office do little in the way of bringing benefits to the general population. And as representatives of women from the upper classes and gentry families, these women have gained political rights and are assisting men from the upper classes in perpetuating damages even further. If their legislative work benefits upper-class women only, it deepens the suffering of lower-class women. In short, even if equal rights could thus be effected, it would not allow everyone to participate equally in politics. In effect, a small minority of women in political office would occupy positions of domination. They would rule the majority of powerless women, and not only would the disparity between men and women continue, a disparity among the different classes of women would also emerge. This is incompatible with feminism, since the goal of women's emancipation is to enable each and every woman to partake in the joys of freedom, rather than only a small minority of women at the top of the social hierarchy. In order for all women to be free, they have to be free not only from patriarchal oppression, but also from the economic and political oppression of capitalism and the state. This is both because they oppress women directly, and also because they are interconnected with patriarchy. The emancipation of women is therefore tied to and requires universal human emancipation through the abolition of all systems of domination and exploitation. She wrote that, "My understanding of gender equality implies equality among all human beings, which refers to the prospect of not only men no longer oppressing women, but also men no longer oppressed by other men, and women no longer oppressed by other women." Given this, rather than wrest power from men, modern women should aim to overturn the rule of man by compelling men to renounce their privileges and power, and humble themselves so man and woman can achieve equality on women's terms. In my view, the ultimate goal of women's liberation is to free the world from the rule of man and from the rule of woman. She therefore advocated not just a women's revolution, but also a complete social revolution. The women's revolution is but one aspect of the social revolution. This social revolution involved, among other things, the establishment of the collective ownership of the means of production and the abolition of the state. In other words, the establishment of anarchist socialism. He-yin is one of my favourite authors, and I hope that this video encourages more people to read her. As always, the source is in the description.